Into the Woods seems to be about fairy tales, but really what it's about are very human experiences and emotions. So while the stories focus on fairy tale characters, it really is about serious human reality, sadness. Bad things happen in the world and you can't control that. And do you just give up and sit down and stop living, or do you pick the pieces up and you move on? And this is the year when I have been very focused on how do we pick up pieces? What is it that causes a person to decide that even though it's broken, the pieces are worth picking up and putting them back together and moving on to something that's new? And so this musical seemed to be the right thing to do. Here at Buena Vista University, because I do multiple things, I teach and I direct, there's a kind of overlap that happens in what I'm required to do. And so I always feel like I'm teaching, no matter if I'm directing or in the classroom. As a director, my job is to conceptualize a play and to do a thorough analysis on that script, to cast it, to bring actors into rehearsal, share my analysis with them, create a performance text that will tell that story to an audience.
I auditioned for Into the Woods because it just seemed like a really fun musical. I wouldn't normally have auditioned for a musical because I'm not the best vocalist, but it seemed like a really fun script and I thought it'd be a good time, so I thought why not. I didn't exactly audition for a particular character, it was more of a general audition, so whatever part they thought I would best fit is where they put me. In the play, I was the steward. The story behind the steward is that he's following around Cinderella's prince, and he basically is at his beck and call, so he does whatever he needs and he does the royal agenda. And he's kind of a pompous ass, I guess. He's very into himself, he's very into his job, and he thinks he's very important. So that's kind of what drove the character for me. So the evolution of the steward, to understand that, you have to understand that he's a very ambitious person anyways. So at the beginning of the play, you see him just following around the prince, doing what he's told. But he does go off on his own and try to accomplish something on his own and try to bring that back to the prince to kind of glorify himself. So when the giant attacks the palace and he kind of goes off on his own and tries to lead the step family away from there, you kind of see him become, the ambitious side kind of come out, and him trying to really take control of the situation.
So what I would want people to know about this play is that when you come to see our Into the Woods, you get to decide what the woods look like. You get to see what's on the stage, fill in the blanks however you fill them in, because it's really more about you and your world and your way of thinking than it is about ours.
Every actor wants to play the bad guy. That's the most fun role you could play. So I thought it was a good time. Why would someone want to play the bad guy? You get to do things on stage that you wouldn't normally be able to do, like kill someone. You know, it's interesting, and you kind of get to bring out a side of yourself that maybe is not acceptable by most societal standards. I mean, I was fine with it. It was, obviously after I had killed her, I didn't feel quite as silly in that moment. I felt much more serious, and part of me, as I was acting it out, felt a little regret, but I immediately, tried to justify that in my mind and make it out so I wasn't such a bad person. So definitely right when that happens, and even when the giant comes into the scene, I don't feel quite as outrageous as I did earlier on in the production. Watching the play, I suppose, is kind of a shock, but he was trying to do this basically to save his own ass, but he kind of justifies it in his own mind that he's doing it to protect everyone. So in his mind, he's made it in a way so he doesn't believe that he is evil, whether or not he really is. But so definitely the people watching and the other characters in the play perceive him as a bad guy, but in his own mind, he doesn't see himself as that way. I suppose the message that the steward tries to send through the script is he's a very go-getter person, and that ambition kind of got in the way of what was right and what was wrong in his mind, and what led him to eventually kill Jack's mom. But he was so ambitious that he didn't care really who he hurt along the way. He was just trying to get to his end goal. So I think it was trying to remind people that throughout the course of their life that they shouldn't be too focused on what they want. They need to be able to take in their surroundings and take into account the other people that their actions will affect. So I think that was the kind of the message that was trying to be sent with that character. Some evils that are being portrayed that from other characters really aren't obvious. They're not there for everyone just to look at and say, oh, that's evil. What evils are being portrayed are very, very slight and very something that anyone could do. Like in the first act, you see everyone just scrambling around trying to get what they want, and they don't think about what their actions could cause, the consequences of those actions, and it comes to light in the second act. And then there's the giant, who is basically the consequence of everyone's selfishness, and she is once again pretty selfish, wanting to kill everyone just because her husband giant had died due to all the miscellaneous events that led to it. So not everyone is very blatantly evil, not even the giant really, because all she wants is to get revenge. She wants justice for what had happened to her husband, but it's just everyone becomes blind in their search for what they want.
I feel like what makes this production unique to us is that it is based on a really important issue that I'm very aware of this year. I have a little girl who's in the 6th grade, and she is a beautiful, intelligent, creative person. She writes stories. She's constantly thinking about stuff, just lots of different kinds of stuff. And I think she's a spectacular human being, but there are people in her school that didn't think so this year. And as I watched her encounter this pressure to be other than she is, to conform to somebody else's belief of how she should be, I wanted to make a statement that says, no, you don't have to do that. Nobody has to do that. If you have an imagination, there's a place for you in this world. And if you have feelings about things, it's okay. You can have those feelings. And so this production, for me, is all about staking a claim for individuality and for the importance of trusting and believing in each other even when we're different from each other, especially when we're different from each other.
There's a lot you can take out of this play. You could focus on those individual things, but it's kind of trying to take in everything from the evils that you see in life and in the world today and try to mush them into a 3-hour production. So we're trying to give you a sense of the evils of life and how that can impact such an impressionable mind, being Bea, and how that can bring her thoughts into a very dark place. But the main focus of the play is on Bea and her struggle in life and why that's causing her to go to such a dark place. And that dark place could have been brought upon by all these various evils that she has seen on TV or in the news. So it just kind of makes you realize all this stuff is happening and all the kids and children are exposed to it, and you just kind of have to wonder, what do they think of all this? And this play kind of shows you that.
So some of the things that I think are important about this musical is that, you know, people often try to make us be something that we're not. They want us to fit the mold that they have for us rather than us just being ourselves. And in schools, that's called bullying. And even though we don't call it that necessarily when we're adults, people still feel that way. You know, you can tell when someone doesn't accept you for who you are. So I think one of the things that interests me in this play is this idea that we accept each other for who we are. We value each other.
It definitely brings a little more of an adult aspect to the play, especially when the adultery happens between the baker's wife and the Cinderella's prince. Yeah, it kind of represents a sort of greed that they have and the lust that they have for women in general. They just keep wanting more and variety of women. I don't know if it's necessarily evil. It might just be a psychology disorder.
My deepest hope is that audiences will come to the show. They will see the celebration of all these different character types. They will hear the message that no one is alone, and they will walk out feeling that somehow they can encounter their challenges in their own lives with a little more confidence. That the play will have built up their core belief in the world and in themselves.
What I took out of it from the character development was that sometimes you don't realize that you change. The changes come usually a little slowly, and then all of a sudden you just kind of snap, and then you're a completely different person, and you don't realize that, but it affects people, and it changes people's view on how they see you. So throughout life, you just kind of have to be conscious about that sudden change that could happen when you're blinded to the other people around you, when you're too focused on your goals. The greater the good, the harder the blow.